Do you know how many years it takes to become a professor in mathematics? It's actually a lot longer than you might expect. So the start of the journey is usually an undergraduate degree in mathematics or a field very close to mathematics, and that usually takes about 4 years. Now, after you're undergraduate, if you want to be a professor at a research university, typically you need a graduate degree, particularly a PhD. Now, the average time in the United States to get a PhD from an undergrad is usually about 5.5 years in mathematics. Now, that timeline can vary a lot. For example, some people do masters before PhDs, and that amps the timeline up. I actually did a master's, for example. However, it's still the case that in the United States, the average amount of time is 5.5 years. Now, in mathematics, typically after a PhD, one does a postdoctoral fellowship. Now, what does that mean? Well, the words give you a little bit of a hint. Postdoctoral means after your doctoral degree, and the postdoctoral fellowship is kind of like being an apprentice professor for a few years. Now, the thing with postdocs is that they vary a lot time-wise. Some of them can be only 1 to 2 years, and some of them last up to 7 years. So for the sake of argument, let's just say that the average postdoc is somewhere between 3 and 6 years. Now, after a postdoc, the first stage of being a professor is actually being an assistant professor. And this is sort of like your first 5 to 7 years of being a professor before you land what's called tenure. Tenure is considered your key to academic freedom. It allows you to broaden your research areas without as much consequences as you might have in your early years doing so. At this stage, you typically become an associate professor, and you're an associate professor for another 6 to 8 years or so. During this time, you sort of move in your career from being an active participant in your research area to a leader in your field internationally. And that's about the time when you become a full professor. So all in all, from the beginning of undergrad to being a full professor, takes about 20 to 25 years.